City Council Committee on Ordinances, Licenses, and Legal Affairs, co-posted with the Committee of the Whole, met in Council Chambers on Thursday, March 7th, 2024, at 6:04 p.m. for the purpose of discussing the City Ordinance, Chapter 2, Section 2-1688, City Council to authorize the mayor to enter into a 20-year agreement with Framingham-based Amoresco, an energy services company. Let me see. The notice of the meeting was posted on February 28th, 2024 at 10:48 a.m. Absent from the committee is Councilor Watson-Felt. Joining us from the Committee of the Whole, Councilor Merkel, Varela, Hapworth, Jersalow, and Stott. Okay, and joining us from the city, we have remotely Neil Duffy from the Sustainability Department. He's brought with him Beth Greenblatt from Beacon Strategies, who's also joining us remotely. We also have ZC Alapakis from the school department, Elizabeth Polly from the school department, Anna Friedman from finance, Mary O'Neill from sustainability, Anthony Delaney from purchasing. I think that's it. Did I get everybody? Great. Okay, so we're going to start with Neil, who's going to kind of introduce the subject before us tonight. And why do we not have video? Yep. Okay. Did it go on? Hold on, we're waiting. There we go. Did that work?
Yeah.
No. Okay, all right. Now, whoa, hold on. Okay. Neil, do you want to go?
You ready?
Yep.
Thanks, Councilor Marcillo. It's good to be here. Sorry I'm not there in person. The memo sent with this order originally from the mayor and from me, I think provided a general overview of what we're here for. The city engaged with Amoresco dating a couple years back in November of 2022. The city decided to go forward with an energy management services contract, which is a procurement vehicle allowed by the state to essentially to potentially do multiple energy conservation measures at comprehensive energy conservation measures at many city and school facilities. So we have been in the process of developing an investment grade audit for that larger energy management services contract that we've been engaged with Amoresco on for essentially the last year. That investment grade audit process began almost on about this time last year. So the reason we're here now is that the schools have prioritized some projects at the Bates Elementary and Witchcraft Heights Elementary schools, namely controls at both of those buildings, and then also replacing the boilers at the Bates School. And they are hoping to utilize ESSER and IVAC grant funds to pay for those projects. And so the ESSER funds especially have a deadline in September where they need to be spent. The IVAC funds, I believe, are by the end of the year. And also because we want to do this work, especially the boilers, before the next heating season, it was really important to move these projects forward as quickly as possible. These are projects that were identified in the investment grade audit with Amoresco, along with over $10 million worth of other comprehensive projects at all school buildings and all city buildings. So what we're here to do is to hopefully enter into a contract with Amoresco for what we're calling this mini project that we've been working on in an expedited fashion to be able to do the work on time so that we can leverage the grant funds, ESSER and IVAC, as well as EECBG grant funds and National Grid incentives that also expire in the fall, such that the city can do all of this work without issuing any debt. This seemed like the quickest way to procure these services. I think there may be some questions based on some emails I've received from counselors today about why we're entering into a 20-year contract for what are construction projects. I would say that is part of the regulatory nature of this procurement vehicle, is that we are required, Amoresco is required to guarantee performance and savings for the work that they're doing. And there's a term involved in that, and they're required to demonstrate that the projects that they are implementing are performing to the level that they have stated they would, or they are liable to, they need to compensate us for that. So that's the nature of 25A, section 11I, I think, procurement in these contracts. What is unique about this is that we're trying to expedite these projects initially, and that the idea is that we will be finishing up the more comprehensive investment grade audit over the next couple of months, and projects that are attached to that have been submitted as part of the regular capital planning process, and the city over the spring will be determining which of the full menu of those projects that we will potentially be going forward with Amoresco. So hopefully the overview I just provided didn't confuse matters. The short story is that the reason we're doing this is try to, as quickly as possible, get these projects done at the schools. And the clock that we are on has to do with the grant funds that will be paying for the projects almost fully.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair Marcillo. Through you to Director Duffy. A couple of things, a couple of comments and then a question. In my conversations, just want to verify this is true with the mayor, because we do have a green building ordinance for municipal properties, and it would be great, as Mayor Pangallo agrees, to have had heat pumps, but because we couldn't switch out a boiler for a heat pump because of the piping, we can't do that job in time to meet the funding. Correct?
So trying to electrify Bates and swapping out existing gas boilers for an electric option is a much more comprehensive and more expensive project, I think, to your point. So first, let me just say, I agree. I'm as the Director of Sustainability and Resiliency, the last thing I want to do is to be replacing fossil fuel equipment. But I think that the plan that we have to pursue is net zero over time. And with these existing school buildings, we simply have failing equipment that is jeopardizing our ability to heat the school for the students. And there isn't an alternative, an electrification alternative that isn't hugely more expensive. There is no heat pump boiler that you can just swap out for these gas boilers, unfortunately. So with these boiler projects, it's a bit of medicine that we have to take as we plan our decarbonization of all of our municipal and school buildings. What essentially this does is will put Bates towards the back of the list as far as schools that we'd probably be identifying as targets for electrification. I would say in addition to that we're working with National Grid right now. They have some free technical assistance programs to study possible electrification, staged electrification over time of 3 other schools that we're targeting. And I'm glad Emmy is there tonight. She has been working on putting together an overall decarbonization plan for all of our municipal facilities. I also want to mention that for the larger investment grade audit and the larger projects, there are partial electrification projects for all of the fire stations, and then many projects that will reduce emissions in many of the buildings. The last thing we wanted to do was to make it harder to electrify, but I think the reality is with the condition of some of our buildings, we do need to get them back into a status of good repair. The last thing I'll mention about that is that with the Bates School, if there were to be a partial electrification or full electrification over time of that building, at least with the existing technology, it's helpful to have a boiler on standby. And so we would be taking care of that essentially now, such that, again, years from now, when we're getting back to the Bates to electrify it, we'd be in better shape.
Thank you. From an environmental standpoint, a more efficient boiler is better than a failing one. In the contract, it's really great. So I get a comment and then 2 quick questions. It's really great that we have the guaranteed performance, and also that Amoresco is responsible for the removal of hazardous materials, which I'm assuming is the boiler, the tanks, and all the other things that work that way. I will say that in my previous life, I never worked with Amoresco, but I was very aware of them, and they have a very good reputation in the industry. We did some of the same things they did, and I think they're kind of one of the leaders in the state. And so here's my 2 quick questions. I'll ask them together. The first one is that based on what you said, that Amoresco is responsible for, guaranteeing performance over 20 years. That's kind of a requirement in this process. My assumption, if you could verify this, is that the money that we're getting from the funding is paying fully for that 20-year warranty from Amoresco. And the other thing that I wanted to ask, it's kind of similar, is if we as a city do not feel like Amoresco is performing to the level that we've negotiated with them, do we have out clauses like first year, 5-year, 10-year that we can end the contract? So first of all, is the grant money paying for the full warranty for Amoresco through the term? And do we have any kind of out clause based on any kind of performance review that the city might be doing with them on a regular basis?
So the process of them guaranteeing the savings, it's called the measurement and verification process and agreement that we have with them, and that cost of that for these projects starts at $3,000 a year and goes up, I think 3% every year for if it lasted for 20 years. That cost is not included in the total project cost, and it would be something that we would need to be budgeting for going further out into budget years. In my view, that is what especially when it comes to the controls, I think there's a real value there because they will be providing reports essentially to Z and to ME and to facility staff in order to demonstrate that the equipment is performing the way it should be. But if it's not, they will be identifying why. And it's not as much about them necessarily paying us because it's not, but it's about addressing whatever is happening. planning, and that's a level of support, and I'm happy to have Z speak to this, but that's a level of support that we don't necessarily have, and I think that could be used by the schools. I would say in terms of the contract, we are able to withdraw from that agreement, the performance agreement. They would no longer be guaranteeing the performance, but we would no longer be paying for the measurement verification. So let's say 5 years from now, 8 years from now, whenever it is, if everything's performing the way we think it should be, and perhaps the school facilities has a strong grasp on all of that equipment and feels confident, at that point we could say we no longer need that guarantee, we no longer need the reports and service from you, and we could pull out from that and no longer need to budget for that $3,000 plus cost. I'll defer to Beth if there's anything I misspoke on or left out.
Here supporting the city on this project. Neil's explanation was right on. I mean, the grants, rebates, incentives, and the additional outside funds that are being brought in to make this project happen are designed to pay for the actual cost for the design, the construction, the project management to get the project fully implemented. The measurement and guarantee provision that Neil just referenced is both statutorily required and also required or will be required as part of the contract documents. As Neil mentioned, the city will always have the option of opting out of that relationship at any point going forward. The city may consider doing that, as Neil mentioned, if you see the project performing as expected. I think one of the benefits of this project is it's providing a set of common equipment for the school department to be able to fully manage and operate and maintain the operations of the building and the associated mechanical systems of the building, which I think will make a huge difference to not only how the building operates, but the comfort level of the space. There's all kinds of control technologies that are being implemented as part of this project to help improve the environmental air quality in the space through additional ventilation and moderating that. But it will also give Z and his folks an opportunity to really monitor performance of systems and in advance or in real time see if there's any issues going on. So I think the annual measurement and verification, while not only statutorily required, but the annual measurement and verification will provide a series of data on a regular basis to Z and his staff to be able to understand how the buildings are actually operating. And that's something that I know they're anxious to really see over time.
Thank you, Beth. Anyone else with questions? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Councilor Marcillo. I guess my question is, the BMS system that they're installing in the schools, is that strictly for heating and cooling, or is it a building management system that is going to basically give us data and control of the lighting and any other aspect of energies that's being used within the schools?
I believe the controls for Witchcraft and Bates is for the heating and cooling of the schools, not for the lighting.
So the BMS system they're putting in is strictly for heating and cooling? Does it have the capability of expansion for the other aspects of the school?
I think the answer to that question is yes. I defer to Z, but I think we can expand on the ability to control other pieces of equipment or control new pieces of equipment that come in over the next 10,
So
20
yes, I think
years.
it's the Niagara 4 software. We're installing non-proprietary software for the BMS, and it has the capabilities of doing not only HVAC, heating and cooling, but also security and tying in electricity too.
Thank you. And one more question. I know the contract's for 20 years. As we all know, because I know in the past 20 years, technology has definitely changed. Is there any type of agreement with Amoresco that if the technology changes, that are they responsible for updating the technology within the schools on that contract?
No, they don't need to update the technology. I would just say that, reiterate that we can withdraw from that performance agreement if we feel like it's not of value. I think my suggestion would be at least in the first 3 to 5, if not more years, we keep it in place to make sure that everything's performing the way it should be before we start thinking about that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Z, do you want to add anything more to this about, about the project? No? You're good? Councillor Cohen?
Thank you, Chair Marcillo. I think with the way the questions were answered, that Councillor Harvey and I did, it's really important, for example, to Mr. Duffy's point, if we're able to convert to electric in the 8th or 10th year, whatever, I think it behooves the city to move in a more environmentally sound manner. But I'm going to move that we refer this back to the council with a positive recommendation.
Councillor Cohen moves to refer this back to the council with a positive recommendation for approval. Seconded by Councillor Harvey. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries 4-0. Take one more. Councillor Davis.
I move to adjourn.
Councillor Davis moves to adjourn. All those in favor? We are adjourned. I want to thank everyone. Neil, thank you for being here. I hope you feel better. Beth Greenblatt, thank you for answering questions and being here. And to the rest of the city staff, thank you so much for being here.